Isn't that a beautiful camera? This is my first camera, and how I came to photography and everything and why I got this camera, I will tell you in this video. In my Instagram stories a couple days ago, I did some questioning. What question should I answer? And a question that was asked a lot was, Ben, what was your first camera? And how did you came to photography? And what were your first images? And so on and so on. And because I just moved and this is my new office, and yeah, it's kind of dirty right now because there are boxes around, pretty messy. But that's why I found actually my first camera, because I hold it as a treasure. This was my first camera I bought myself. I photographed with a different camera before, but I have no idea what camera it was. I found images of the camera, but I think it was my mother's camera that I borrowed, or some other camera, I have no idea. But this was my first camera I bought. It's a Casio Xelim 7.2 megapixel camera, 3x optical zoom, wide 2.6 inch LCD, anti-shake DSP. Would you buy this camera today? I don't think so, but 11 years ago, that was an amazing camera, and it was actually in my budget. And the purpose why I had this camera was because it was my last year in school. So we finished school, and in Germany, it's usually like this, that when you have your last year of school, when everything is written, you have all your exams written and stuff, then you go on a last trip all together, the whole class, for 1 week, in some nice Spanish city, and then you just celebrate that you finished school. So for that reason, I bought this camera. It was capable of video as well, so I did some filming with this camera. I made a whole movie actually on this camera for my last class. So at the last day, when we get our certificates, or whatever it's called in English, I showed the movie. I did like a documentary, funny documentary, 10-minute movie. I filmed with this camera as well, and with the microphone inside and everything, 11 years ago, yeah. And then we went on the trip, and as you can see, we did some images, but most of the time actually we drank, and we celebrated, and we forgot to photograph. But on the last 2 days, we took some amazing photos, like this, for example. This is my friend, and we did some, how is it called, some lifting, and we did fitness stuff. And last, you know, I was a good guy. And yeah, then we took photos of each other, of our trained bodies and stuff. So my friend climbed up a rock, and I took some photos in black and white. I did everything in the camera. I had no idea of image editing or anything. I did everything in the camera. So I turned the camera black and white. I said, let's go, look in that direction, do it like this, do a bit more on your muscles, pump. And yeah, that's how the first photos actually came out of this tiny camera. And then for 2 years, I did some more images, but I don't have them anymore. Those are the only images that are remaining, which is a bit sad, because that is, in digital age, the problem, that when you don't save it properly or you don't print it out, that you lose your images maybe, and all your memories you have from the past. Only in your mind it stays. Yeah, but all the rest is lost for the next 2 years actually. And then there was a turning point. Then my interest for photography was totally triggered. In 2009, I borrowed a camera from my father because he had a 5D Mark I with a 85mm 1.8. And when I looked for the first time through that viewfinder, through that huge camera, which is, when you have a 5D, it's boom compared to that camera. It was amazing to see how everything is blurry in the background, how you can, get a subject in the foreground sharp, and in the background it gets blurry, or in the foreground it gets blurry with a nice, it was just amazing to look through the camera. So I was pretty fixed, and I said to my father, hey, can I borrow this for 1 day? Can I borrow that for 2 days? And gave it back and got it again, gave it back and got it again. What I did mostly in 2009 was portrait stuff. So I had nothing to do with landscape actually. I liked landscape. I always liked nature. I did a lot of available light when I started to photograph. Then I did a lot with flashlight. I tried out studio, I tried out macro, I tried like everything. And that's what I recommend everybody. Just try out everything, just do everything, buy a camera that's in your budget and just do whatever you like. And then you see, I like this more, I like this more. So in 2009, You see some images while I talk here. I did a lot of images, portrait stuff and everything, and learned a lot about photography. The next year then, I did a project where I photographed homeless people in Berlin. It was a charity project. We did a calendar out of this. We donated a big amount of money to a charity organization that cares for homeless people. And that was a great project. And that was actually a good practice for me as well, because just try to do model stuff and photograph friends and do that kind is one thing, but then give your whole photography like a theme and like a subject, that is a different thing. And so I can recommend you try to do a whole topic in photography, like I did, for example, with homeless people. So I did everything black and white, everything on 85mm, everything on 1.8, everything just with interesting people, character, people. That's what I liked. I was always impressed by people that looked just interesting. Then I had some trouble with my father again, and then he wanted his camera back that I borrowed from him, and then I had no camera anymore. But during that time I started to work at a radio station as well, so that was kind of cool for me in 2010. So I said, okay, I work at the radio anyway, so let's skip photography for 1 or 2 years and just concentrate on my career as a radio host. So I did that whole thing. I worked as a radio, I got educated at the radio. I did that whole thing for 4 years, but in the 3rd year it started to come back to me. Photography came back. So I decided, okay, I got my first paychecks, I got my first own money, so let's buy a camera yourself. So I don't need to borrow a camera anymore, I buy myself a camera. But I don't need an expensive camera, I don't need to spend that much money, it's just a hobby. So let's buy a camera. I went in the electric shop and I just bought a Canon 600D. And with this camera, I did a lot of YouTube videos on my German channel. If you are not German, you don't know the channel, but if you are German, you have seen the channel, I think. So I did a lot of videos then with that camera on this channel where I taught people how I started to photograph, what I like, and just did some, just some behind the scenes stuff actually. And then some more educative stuff, and that's how everything came into rolling. In 2012 I started to travel a lot again with my girlfriend, and then we went to Greece, we went to Egypt, and I started actually with landscape photography. That was where I was very impressed with long exposures and with nice landscape. Scotland changed a lot for me, the rough weather, and I have never seen something like Scotland before. I always was in Berlin or in the surrounding. I of course did some traveling, but not in colder countries. Usually I went in countries that are a bit warmer, where you can lay on the beach, on the pool and so on. So Scotland was one of the first countries I was where it was a bit colder, and I was, as I told, very impressed by this. So there, everything and all my passion for landscape photography and stuff started to really pop out. And from that time then, I decided I want to do more travel, I want to do more, I want to do more photography. I'm satisfied with my job as a radio host, but I still can be a radio host anytime, because what you learn, you can always do. And when I don't try out my own stuff now, maybe I will never do. So I quit in the radio station. There were some circumstances that were pro for my decision, but it was a tough decision for me, because going from a good paid job to an unknown field is always tough. But it was a good decision, and it brought me to where I am today. And everything started with this tiny camera. Casio Exili 7.2 megapixel camera. So I want to know from you now, what was your first camera? How did you start with photography? With which camera maybe? Write it in the comments below, and I can tell you there will be another video where I take this camera out in the field and will try out how this camera performs for me today. Can I still capture amazing photos with this camera? So you can look forward to that video. If you like the video, hit thumbs up, share it with your photography friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.